Keanu Reeves was at home enjoying a rare day off. He had just made some coffee, holding a large mug in his hand, ready to relax and savor a few minutes of tranquility, when he heard his dog barking outside. The barking sounded agitated, not the usual bark at a cat or a mail carrier. It had something extra, an alarming tone. Keanu frowned, set his mug on the living room table, and walked to the back door, feeling a slight chill down his spine without knowing why. Whatever was happening wasn't good. The moment he opened the door, he realized the dog's barking had abruptly stopped. That made his heart race. He ran into the backyard, trying not to trip on anything, his eyes scanning the area for his four-legged friend. The dog usually jumped into bushes, sometimes chased squirrels, but that sudden silence was too strange. Stepping outside, he saw an utterly unbelievable scene. 3 tall figures with bluish skin, dressed in something reminiscent of a glossy white uniform, similar to stormtrooper armor from sci-fi films. A reddish glow lit the grass, emanating from some kind of car-sized device that was floating just above the ground. And within that glow, Keanu managed to spot the shape of his dog being dragged by one of the aliens. The animal tried to break free, flailing its paws and letting out a desperate whine, seeming as confused as Keanu, who froze momentarily, unable to process what he was seeing. Who would break into his home like that? And why would they take his dog? What kind of madness was this? But a spark of fury flared inside him. He wasn't just any man. He was Keanu Reeves, someone who had played countless fighting in action, roles in movies, but who also had a certain calmness in real life. However, seeing his dog in that helpless situation awakened something fierce. Without thinking, he rushed forward. The alien holding the dog turned its neck, revealing bright yellow eyes. Surprised, it made a guttural sound, as though trying to alert the others. But it wasn't fast enough. Keanu used all his momentum to leap and slam into the attacker, knocking it to the ground. The dog slipped from the alien's arms and scurried back toward Keanu, but it couldn't get far. 2 more aliens appeared on the right, each brandishing metallic weapons with glowing details. Unsure how to react to that, Keanu just shouted, "Don't touch my dog!" and stood in front of the animal, ready to protect it. One alien raised its weapon. Keanu heard a rising buzz, as if a beam of energy was about to fire. He lunged at the second alien, trying to knock it down with his shoulder, reminiscent of a hand-to-hand combat move. He managed to hit the alien, but not enough to take it out. The blue-skinned creature lost its balance, stumbling over a small step in the yard, but soon regained its stance and prepared to shoot again. Keanu took 2 steps back, noticing he was outgunned. Before he could get shot, though, the first alien got up and made a sudden gesture with its right arm. Something activated a device, and the big red beam hovering over the yard began to glow more intensely. Within seconds, Keanu felt a massive force pulling him toward the beam, as though gravity had suddenly reversed just for him. He had only enough time to grab the dog, wrapping an arm around the animal's body, and catch a glimpse of the aliens also being sucked into the light. A sort of tractor beam. The glow became stronger, and then everything around vanished. He no longer saw the yard's ground or felt the night air, only the sensation of rapidly ascending, heart pounding, stomach churning, like riding an inverted roller coaster. When the light faded, Keanu found himself lying in a metallic corridor, with a dark gray floor. The walls had phosphorescent lines pulsing in an orange tone. The atmosphere smelled chemical, almost like a high-tech lab mixed with something organic, hard to describe. Next to him, his dog trembled. Keanu held the animal, stroking it to calm it down. He needed to figure out where they were and what was happening. He heard hurried footsteps and strange voices speaking in a guttural language, clearly the aliens. In the background, there was an engine-like noise, but not like a car. Something larger, like softly rumbling turbines, almost imperceptible. He ducked behind a metal crate against the wall, trying to see how many enemies were there. The 3 from the backyard, he surmised, had also come aboard. 2 looked confused, exchanging words and pointing at the weapon. Perhaps they hadn't expected Keanu to be so resilient and managed to force his way onto the ship. The dog, still, frightened, let out a low whimper and Keanu signaled for it to stay quiet. He knew a confrontation was inevitable within seconds. To his surprise, one alien ran past in the corridor, ignoring them. Maybe it had a different duty or was going for reinforcements. Either way, Keanu realized he had to act quickly. Then another alien approached with silent steps, intending to surprise him, but Keanu had good reflexes. When the creature appeared at the edge of the crate, he punched at the height of its helmet. The impact resounded, and the alien staggered, dazed, not falling immediately. The uniform it wore didn't look very robust, but still offered some protection. Even so, Keanu pressed the attack, kicking the alien's knee. This time it toppled over. Quickly, Keanu snatched the weapon from the alien's belt. The alien weapon looked bizarre, like a pistol with short blades on the sides, glowing green. Keanu had no idea how it worked, but assumed the bigger button was probably the trigger. He aimed at the alien on the floor but hesitated. He didn't want to shoot, not knowing the effect it might have. It could be lethal or something scarier. He opted not to fire. He aimed upward and pressed the button. A thin, bluish energy beam shot out, sparking on the ceiling. He saw it had penetrating power, definitely dangerous. The alien on the ground muttered something, reached for its helmet and touched a small sensor, maybe calling for help via internal comms. Without thinking, Keanu struck the alien's helmet, smashing what seemed to be the communication device. He needed to stay in control. He picked up the dog with one arm, holding it against his chest, and ran along the corridor, still clutching the weapon in his other hand. Pipes ran across the ceiling. Doors opened automatically as he came near. He had to figure out where he was and how to leave, or at least how to keep the dog safe and escape. The ship gently trembled, suggesting it might already be in space. It was a disturbing thought. He was off Earth, against his will, inside an alien craft, his dog terrified. But Keanu had no time to brood. He had to save the dog and get home. Rounding a corner, he suddenly faced another alien, dressed in a slightly different uniform with a shining insignia on the shoulder. Probably a higher-ranking officer. The alien lifted a larger weapon than Keanu's, something like an energy rifle, uttered a shout in its strange language, and Keanu ducked behind a pillar. A shot rang out. A green beam hit the wall, leaving a smoking mark. The dog whimpered in fear. Keanu looked around for extra cover. Everything was sleek and futuristic, with little to improvise behind. Heart in his throat, he swung out from the pillar, aimed the alien pistol at the officer, and squeezed the trigger repeatedly. A volley of blue beams streaked down the corridor. At least one struck the officer's shoulder, flinging him against the wall, silent. Keanu couldn't tell if he'd killed the alien or merely knocked it unconscious. His stomach churned. He disliked extreme violence but had no choice. They'd been willing to grab his dog and shoot him, so hesitation was not an option. He pressed on, glancing around each turn. The ship seemed bigger than he'd imagined. Lights flickered, automatic. Doors hissed open whenever he got close. Suddenly a siren blared, as if an invasion alarm. The place became bathed in a pulsing red light, and an odd voice announced something in the alien language. Though Keanu couldn't understand, he guessed they were saying a human was on the loose, posing a threat. Realizing that, he sped up. He had to find an escape pod or something similar, but he had no idea how to pilot an alien craft. Then another thought. Maybe he could force them to land back on Earth. For that, he'd need the bridge. His dog trembled but stayed loyal by Keanu's side, giving him a sense that he wasn't alone. Keanu stroked the dog's back, a slight smile, flickering, vowing that no one would ever lay hands on it again. He had to keep fighting, even if it was against the entire crew. Driven by this resolve, he entered another wide corridor. There he came upon 5 aliens, all armed. They also spotted him and began firing almost simultaneously. Keanu threw himself to the floor, rolling diagonally, seeking cover behind a side panel. Green blasts ricocheted off the walls, sparks erupting from the metal. He returned fire, but there were 5 of them, well prepared. He needed a better tactic. One of their energy rounds whizzed past his shoulder, scorching part of his shirt. He smelled burnt fabric, heart pounding as if it might burst from his chest. Think fast. He spotted an electronic panel on the wall, filled with blinking buttons. Possibly some emergency controls, since a glowing sign hung above it, though in alien characters. Even without understanding, Keanu made a split-second decision. If it was a security panel, maybe he could open or close doors to isolate them. Crawling under enemy fire, he reached it and pressed some buttons randomly. A side door opened, revealing a small room, and 2 more aliens came out, confused, looking around. Terrible idea, he thought. He also saw that one button he pressed activated a force field across part of the corridor, blocking passage. It stopped. 2 of the aliens, but the remaining 3 still had a clear line of fire. Keanu used the chaos to his advantage. With them momentarily distracted, he stood and fired at the closest enemy, knocking him down. The second alien tried returning fire, but missed, and Keanu shot him square in the chest. The third alien dashed behind the force field, trapped, unable to cross. He was shouting something, presumably calling for backup. Keanu breathed heavily, adrenaline burning through him. The ship was full of surprises, but he'd neutralized some of the opposition. Time to move on. He rushed forward with the dog by his side. A few meters later, he found a larger door with a strange alien symbol. It slid open, and Keanu stepped into a large room packed with control consoles and panoramic windows, really monitors displaying outer space. He realized, yes, he was in orbit or maybe even farther. For a moment, he gaped at the view. Stars, and in the distance, a bluish shape that might be Earth or some other planet. His heart skipped a beat. If that was Earth, it was both far and near. He just had to pilot the ship back. But how? In the center of the room were 3 aliens wearing different uniforms. No helmets. One had even bluer, nearly luminescent skin. Judging by the insignia on its chest, it seemed the leader. On seeing Keanu, this alien let out a shout, quickly raising a long-barreled weapon. The other 2 did likewise. Keanu gave them no chance. He fired his alien pistol several times, sending streaks of blue across the air. 2 of them ducked behind a console, while the third rolled behind a panel. The dog growled as if wanting to attack them too. Then the leader alien pointed its rifle at the ceiling and shot a beam. From above, an energy barrier descended, splitting the room in 2. Keanu was on one side with his dog, the aliens on the other. The barrier looked like a cloudy glass, but when Keanu pressed the pistol against it, there was a buzzing, indicating he couldn't cross easily. He tried firing, but the shot dissipated upon contact. Damn, he thought. He was stuck on this side, with his dog, while those aliens on the other side messed with the controls, likely altering the ship's course or calling reinforcements. No time to lose. He scanned the perimeter, walls, monitors, consoles, and noticed an opening near the floor, resembling a maintenance shaft. Maybe he could crawl through there and come out on the other side of the barrier. Without hesitating, he opened the hatch, nudged his dog in, and squeezed into the narrow passage. The cold metal against his arms, his heart pounded. He could hear hurried footsteps in the main chamber, the aliens pressing buttons, but not what they were saying. He needed to surprise them. He followed the shaft, which curved and at one point ascended. He had to stash his weapon in an improvised belt, balancing the dog in his arms, carefully climbing. Reaching the top, there was a grill. Peering through its slats, he saw it opened onto part of the bridge, right behind the main console where the alien leader stood. Internally, he smiled. Gently, he pushed the grill aside. No one was looking up. He slipped out of the vent, crouching behind a structure. The dog quietly followed, seeming to understand the urgency. From this vantage, he spotted the leader and the 2 subordinates with their backs turned, busy at holographic screens. He took a deep breath and crept forward. Closing in on the leader first, he slammed the butt of his pistol into the alien's neck, knocking it down before it could react. The other 2 spun around, but Keanu was already firing. One took a direct hit to the torso. The other tried to dodge, but Keanu was faster, hitting its shoulder. Both collapsed, dropping their weapons. The room went silent except for the constant beeping of instruments. Keanu approached the main console. Lights blinked, and one screen displayed a complex star map. He knew little about spacecraft operation. Glancing at the dog, he said, "Pal, we're in a real mess." But there was no alternative. He had to figure it out. The interface looked alien, filled with strange symbols. Still, some markers were universal geometric shapes. He guessed one might be auto-return or course rotation. Pressing various buttons with hesitant care not to eject something or blow up the ship, he finally triggered a larger screen with some text. He didn't understand, but pressed what seemed like confirm. The ship lurched, and the star map shifted, as if the route had changed. Suddenly, the siren that had been blaring grew louder, and Keanu saw on another display a fleet of smaller, similar ships approaching. Possibly this alien crew's allies coming to intercept him. He swallowed hard. He had to get out before it was too late. Hammered more commands. The ship accelerated, and ear-splitting noise erupted, like entering warp speed or something akin. The stars on the monitor stretched into lines of light. He could hardly believe it. He was piloting what any sci-fi fan dreamed of. Yet the tension was immense. A single mistake could leave him drifting in space forever or smashing into an asteroid. He looked around, searching for a place to secure the dog. He didn't know what maneuvers lay ahead. He decided to tie the animal to a swivel chair near the console, gave the dog a gentle pat, telling it everything would be fine, though he himself was uncertain. He also worried if more alien crew members were on board. By the ship's size, there might be dozens, but he hoped most were away or in some rest area. He took the leader's communicator, a wrist device, and tried listening in, but only got a series of grunts and crackles. Tossing it aside, he focused on piloting. Lights on the panel blinked faster, and the ship vibrated. Seemed the warp drive, or whatever it was, approached its limit, or the enemy fleet was trying to intercept. For an instant, the main screen showed something like a countdown, culminating at a bright point on the star map. Keanu guessed it was their initial destination for abducting his dog. He didn't want to let that happen, but also couldn't fully alter the route. So, by guesswork, he selected an icon resembling a blue globe, hoping it represented Earth. The ship took a sharp turn, nearly throwing Keanu into the console. The dog yelped, but the chair held it in place. On the monitor, it appeared they'd momentarily eluded the fleet. He saw flashing points on the screen's edge. Those other ships weren't far behind. He'd need more speed or a trick to lose them. A big orange button blinked urgently, accompanied by a repeated alert beep. Possibly a hyperdrive overload alarm. He slammed it anyway, and the ship shook wildly, rattling everything. Then, abruptly, the space around them distorted, like tumbling into a whirlpool of light. He shut his eyes to stave off nausea and braced for the worst. When it finally settled, the ship was motionless in space, silent. Internal lights shifted to a yellow alert tone. Keanu looked at the screen and saw a blue planet with familiar continents and white clouds. Earth. He let out a relieved sigh. By some miracle, he'd made it back to Earth's orbit. For how long, he didn't know. The aliens were surely chasing him, and the ship looked damaged. He had to land. So he searched the controls for an automated descent function, tapped a few icons. A landing approach path popped up on screen, indicating the ship would attempt emergency atmospheric entry. He confirmed. And once more the engine noise picked up, the vessel dipping toward Earth. The dog, calmer now, just panted while Keanu spoke to it. "Almost over, buddy. We just have to survive re-entry." They began crossing the atmosphere, the heat rising. The internal readouts showed extreme temperatures, hull crackling. The windows flickered, flames dancing outside. The alien craft was presumably designed for smooth entries, but emergency mode made it rough. Keanu prayed they wouldn't turn into a fireball. The frame groaned loudly, but, thankfully, didn't disintegrate. Soon they could see nearer clouds, and the ground below. It seemed to be a familiar continent, maybe the United States near his home. The panel displayed no human coordinates, but a global map with luminous spots. He banked on luck. Dropping at high speed, he pulled a lever that lit up red. The deceleration nearly wrenched his neck. The dog barked in protest. The ship slowed, hovering a few kilometers above the surface, heading for a wooded or mountainous region, according to the screen. Then, with one final jolt, it landed, scraping through trees, snapping branches, kicking up dirt until it finally stopped. A hiss vented steam from the sides. Done. They had landed. Keanu released the dog's belt and grabbed the alien pistol, standing up. He wondered if a rescue team or the surviving aliens might attack. The panel indicated low power. Forcing that, warp jump had drained most of the fuel or whatever powered the engine. Another takeoff would be tough, but his plan was to vanish, not remain with the ship. He just had to get out, find help, and keep the dog safe. He walked the corridors, spotting sections shorted out, sparks and smoke. He passed two unconscious aliens, apparently injured in the crash. They weren't moving. He bore them no personal hatred, but knew he couldn't help them now. They'd likely attack again. His priority, save the dog. Farther on, he found a docking platform, a circular exit on the ship's side. He punched a few buttons and waited. Soon, the outer door opened to fresh air and the sound of wildlife. He took a deep breath and stepped out, dog in tow, both filthy, sweaty, exhausted, but alive. Outside, he recognized the vegetation as something akin to a North American forest, possibly near his original location, or maybe another country. Mountains in the distance, a low sun in the sky, must be roughly the same time as when he was taken. Either way, they were back on Earth. And in that moment, Keanu grasped the magnitude of what had just happened. He fought aliens, seized control of their ship, jumped through space, and returned. Now he wondered if he was really safe. Were more alien ships on the way to retrieve or kill any witnesses? He decided to get far from the craft. Who knew if it might explode or be tracked by enemies? As he walked through the brush, he felt his dog licking his hand non-stop as if thanking him. He smiled, petting the animal's head. "We're in this together, buddy. Nobody messes with you." He needed a way to civilization. Suddenly, he heard a humming in the sky. Looking up, he saw two smaller ships, almost like fighter jets, a few kilometers away. Possibly alien allies come to investigate the forced landing. A chill ran through him. If they opened fire, there was no escape. He dashed toward a rocky ledge, seeking shelter under the trees. The ships passed overhead and continued. Maybe they couldn't get a precise fix amid the foliage. Keanu pressed on, figuring how to reach a nearby road. Soon, a human military helicopter flew overhead. Someone must have spotted an unidentified craft entering the atmosphere. The local army might be mobilizing. This could be good. Human aid was on the way, hopefully believing he and the dog were victims. On the other hand, it might spark a clash with the aliens, risking casualties. But from Keanu's perspective, it was time to show why Earth shouldn't be underestimated. He knew that in certain internet folklore about the galaxy, humans can be seen as very dangerous, and Keanu felt ready to prove it. After all, a single actor enraged by his dog's abduction had just boarded a ship and beaten up multiple aliens. Imagine what an army or a united humanity could do if the threat was bigger. Then a roar sounded above the treetops. He looked up to see one of the smaller alien fighter ships turning around, descending. They'd probably detected a heat signature. Keanu hid behind a fallen log, pulling his dog close. He watched the craft hover, open a side hatch, and an armored alien jumped out, wearing even more advanced gear. It wielded a red glowing energy lance. Keanu's mouth went dry. This didn't look like an easy opponent. The alien walked slowly, examining the ground, looking for tracks or heat traces left by Keanu. It got within about 10 meters of him and his dog, who were trying not to breathe too loudly. Then Keanu accidentally snapped a twig underfoot. The alien turned at once. Keanu knew he was found. He stood up, pointing the alien pistol he'd taken. The armored figure reacted instantly, swinging its energy lance. A red blaze whooshed overhead. Keanu dove sideways, landing on his shoulder, but keeping his pistol raised. He fired repeatedly, but the alien had a plasma shield attached to the lance, blocking the shots with showers of sparks. He needed to get closer. He got up and ran, trying to flank the enemy. The alien shot a red beam from the weapon's tip, scorching the trees. Part of the trunk behind which Keanu had hidden exploded into splinters. The dog cowered, frightened. As a diversion, Keanu yelled loudly, drawing the alien's attention. The foe turned, and in that moment Keanu fired straight at its knee. Unshielded by the barrier, the alien roared, collapsing onto one knee but still swung the lance. Keanu ducked, feeling the heat brush his neck, and squeezed off 2 more shots. To the alien's helmet. It went down, the weapon going silent. The forest grew quiet once more, save for rustling leaves and Keanu's ragged breathing. He examined the lance but had no idea how to activate it, tossing it aside. The small fighter craft hovered just meters away, apparently a single pilot vehicle open on one side. Maybe it was his chance to fly away. The moment he approached, though, the craft started beeping insistently. Surely some anti-theft mechanism kept enemies from stealing it. He gave up. Better to proceed on foot, find the army or local forces. They could handle any broader invasion, and he'd have to report what happened. He hoped they'd believe him. But he was Keanu Reeves, a famous actor with credibility. If he claimed aliens had been abducting his dog, people might suspect a joke, but the proof was in the sky. He picked up the dog and continued through the rugged terrain. The animal was exhausted. After maybe half an hour, he found a stream and followed it. He had no compass, but heading downstream often leads to some settlement. As he walked, the entire adventure replayed in his mind like an insane action film. Getting abducted, fighting inside the ship, piloting it, escaping, now trudging through a mountain area hoping for help. He sighed, shaking his head. If he told this on a movie set, they'd think it pure fiction, but it was real. He finally reached a dirt road, not heavily traveled, but it was civilization. He cut through some bushes and set foot on its compacted surface. Farther on, he spotted an old pickup truck rumbling slowly along. Waving, he ran closer, but the driver hesitated, seeing Keanu so disheveled, clutching a weird weapon. Quickly, Keanu tucked the pistol in his belt and raised his hands to show no harm. The driver stopped a good distance away, yelling to see if he was okay. Keanu, panting, said he needed help and not to be afraid. The man recognized Keanu, eyes wide, but asked no questions. He hopped out, saw the actor's grimy state, clothes burned, holding a dog. With Keanu's fame, the man was speechless, but gestured to the truck bed, offering a ride. Keanu thanked him and climbed in, relieved to finally meet a friendly human. He wanted contact with the authorities ASAP. In the truck bed, he sat next to the dog, ruffling its ears. The whole thing was surreal. He felt the wind on his face, letting himself relax for a moment. But he knew he had to warn the world about these aliens. If they'd taken his dog, they could do the same to others, people or animals. For what purpose? Some experiment? Collecting exotic creatures? Hard to say. One thing was certain. They'd discovered what humans are capable of when threatened. If we retaliated on a larger scale, Earth could be quite dangerous. Chef Y, as some internet stories go. Humanity F. Yeah, showing we can be terrifying when we choose, especially if someone or something dear to us is threatened. He arrived at a small town where the driver stopped in front of a police station and called the officers over. Keanu hopped out, still carrying his dog. People on the street began to gather, recognizing his famous face. Some asked if this was a movie shoot, but he explained in quick terms, "No, it's real. We had an alien invasion. They took my dog, but I got him back." Many laughed, thinking it a joke, but Keanu's serious tone and battered appearance suggested otherwise. Then the police brought him inside, where he told his story to the local chief, who nearly fell out of his chair in shock. Soon, the army was contacted, as were high-level officials. Word spread rapidly. Military teams cordoned off the crash site, finding wreckage and some aliens alive but unconscious. Confirming extraterrestrial life caused worldwide commotion. The government went on high alert, but Keanu Reeves's fame, along with tangible evidence at the site and what truly happened, lent credibility to the incident. The testimonies from soldiers who encountered the alien survivors and partial crew, still semi-conscious, proved the ship was real. The international community realized if they came on a hostile mission, they might try again. So in a way, Keanu became a symbol of human resistance, showing that even a single guy could ruin the aliens' kidnapping plan. It felt like a movie plot, but it was reality. Experts in space affairs were interviewed, theorizing why the dog was targeted. Maybe it was a test of human reaction, or collecting animal DNA for research. No one knew. Amid the chaos, Keanu remained resolute, hugging his now safe dog. The press surrounded him for statements. He only said, "It was a nightmare, but I'd do it all again to protect my four-legged friend. And if they come back, Earth will be ready." That line gave many chills, revealing unshakable confidence in our ability to fight invaders. Indeed, there was a sense of humans aren't easy. Prey spreading in the news. The dog, meanwhile, became an instant celebrity. Reporters took photos. It looked a bit clumsy, unaware of why so much fuss. Some joked the dog was the world's luckiest supporting star. But Keanu didn't want to exploit any of that. He just wanted to return to normal life, taking the dog home and ensuring no alien would stalk his yard again. In the following days, there were international conferences. Governments debated how to handle the captured ship, its alien prisoners, and proof we're not alone in the universe. Some urged diplomacy for peaceful contact, but Keanu's case suggested it wasn't so simple, since the group that came was clearly hostile. Meanwhile, the story likely spread across the galaxy. Earth is inhabited by determined people who can storm a ship and kill you out of sheer revenge for a kidnapped dog. Who would dare mess with a planet that responds like that? Keanu was invited to speak before leaders and scientists. He recounted his experiences plainly, being pulled by a tractor beam, fighting alien guards, taking their weapon, flying the craft, and returning. Many believed he was too brave for a single person, but the evidence was there. They asked how he managed to pilot without knowing the tech. He replied it was guesswork, trial and error, and a ton of luck. The audience broke into applause, though concerned about a bigger confrontation with these blue-skinned aliens in white suits. Keanu thanked them, saying he didn't see himself as a hero, only someone who wouldn't let vicious creatures take his beloved dog. Meanwhile, the larger ship he brought down underwent intensive study by engineers and military scientists. Some alien technology secrets would come to light, boosting humanity's progress. Rumors circulated that the surviving crew was interrogated, though no one knew how they'd communicate. Possibly telepathy or AI translation. It remained classified. The undeniable fact was that, on that fateful night, Keanu Reeves changed the world by acting out of instinct and love for his dog. It showed that if humans value something, we'll go to the ends of the earth or space for it. The story hit online forums, making a viral phrase, "Don't mess with someone's dog if they're from Earth." Celebrities weighed in, and memes portrayed Keanu as a galactic warrior. Though people had fun with it, deep down there was a strong sense of pride to see how one ordinary man, driven by determination and a dash of courage, could thwart an alien plan. HFY at its finest. Over time, the frenzy died down. The captured aliens remained in international custody, and humanity, united to investigate further invasions. Keanu and his dog returned to normal life, except for the occasional journalist knocking on his door. He politely refused interviews, wanting peace. He'd had enough excitement. One thing was certain, his dog now slept safely at home, unafraid of being snatched away. And if, perchance, an ominous red glow reappeared in the sky, they'd be ready, together, and... So the legend was born of Keanu Reeves avenging the aliens who kidnapped his dog, showing why Earth might be feared. We don't need superpowers, massive armies, or ultra-tech ships. We just need a reason to fight, and there's no reason stronger than protecting what we love, be it a friend, a family member, or in this case, a loyal dog. That message spread throughout the universe, and as far as anyone knows, no alien has dared again to invade Keanu's yard. having learned the hard way that humans can be far more formidable than they seem when it comes to defending what matters. Because of that, the dog could finally relax on the porch, feeling the breeze as his owner petted him tenderly. They both knew that if another red glow appeared in the sky, they would be ready to fight back, together.